In the 1960s and 1970s, a butcher appeared in Northern California, spreading terror to the entire population. After each murder, he sent a mysterious letter without an address to the newspaper offices, claiming to be the murderer and signing it Zodiac. Not only did he have mysterious behavior and commit heinous murders, Zodiac was also arrogantly confident. The Zodiac killer is believed to have committed at least 5 murders in the Northern California area, USA, in 1968 and 1969. After continuous investigations by the police but without any results, in August 1969, local newspapers including the San Francisco Examiner, San Francisco Chronicle, and Vallejo Times-Herald simultaneously received handwritten letters with identical content sent in envelopes without a return address. Welcome to Detective TV. After wreaking havoc on America from 1969 to 1974, Zodiac mysteriously disappeared. Despite decades of police investigation and questioning of suspects, the mystery of who Zodiac was remains unsolved, and the case remains unsolved. The mystery of Zodiac has inspired numerous books and films in American popular culture. Although he was believed to be behind many brutal murders in the late 1960s, police have only confirmed 4 cases to be related to Zodiac to date. The first unofficial case attributed to the Zodiac killer occurred on October 30, 1966, with the victim being 18-year-old Sherry Jo Bates. She was brutally murdered on the campus of Riverside City College, California. Police found a Timex men's watch at the crime scene, traces of a military boot, and a few bloody hairs on the victim's hand. Sherry Jo's purse, which was still intact, and an autopsy found no evidence of sexual assault. Sherry had been stabbed 3 times in the chest, once in the back, and 7 times in the neck. According to police, the severe neck injuries had nearly severed her head. A month later, while police were still searching for the killer, a confession letter arrived with a detailed description of the murder. Included in the letter was a challenge. He wrote, "Miss Bates is stupid. She walked into the trap like a lamb. Be careful. I'm going after your girls now." The first incident occurred on December 20th, 1968, when 17-year-old David Faraday and his girlfriend, 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen, were shot to death on Lake Herman Road, in the suburbs of Vallejo, California. Betty Lou died with 5 bullet wounds to her back. David was found next to the Rambler with a bullet wound to his head. Bullet holes in the hood and rear window suggested that the killer may have fired warning shots to force the victims out of the car. Shell casings recovered at the crime scene were Winchester Western Super XS with copper casings. Police were baffled at the time as they could not determine the killer's motive. Then, in the early morning of July 5, 1969, 22-year-old Darlene Farron and her boyfriend, 19-year-old Mike Mageau, were sitting in a car in a remote area in the suburbs of Vallejo when a man with a flashlight fired several shots at them. Farron died shortly afterward, while Mageau was seriously injured. An hour after the incident, the Vallejo Police Department received a strange phone call. The voice on the other end of the line informed the police of the location where he had shot Farron and Mageau, and claimed that he was the one who had shot Faraday and Jensen the year before. Although Mageau later described the suspect's appearance, the police were still unable to identify the Zodiac. On August 1, 1969, the San Francisco Examiner, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Vallejo Times-Herald each received an identical handwritten letter in an unaddressed envelope. The letter began, "To the editor, I am the murderer who killed 2 teenagers at Lake Herman last Christmas." The letter contained specific and accurate details about both incidents, which led authorities to believe that the sender was the real killer. The Zodiac demanded that the 3 newspapers put his letter on the front page or he would threaten to kill more people. In addition, the letters sent to the newspapers ended with a circle symbol and a cross dividing the circle into 4 parts. Each letter included a third of a cipher that, if put together, would form the full cipher that, according to the Zodiac killer, would reveal his true identity. Faced with this audacity, the local police department, with the assistance of the FBI, was mobilized to the fullest extent to hunt down Zodiac. But in the end, there was still no positive result. A few days later, the killer continued to send another letter to the San Francisco Examiner. It began, "To the editor, Zodiac here," with the content, "To the editor, Zodiac here," with a detailed description of another murder, and a complaint about the police's failure to decipher the previous cipher or catch him. However, a few days later, a high school teacher named Donald Harden and his wife Betty announced that they had cracked the code, revealing the Zodiac's creepy thoughts, including, "I like killing people because it is more fun than hunting wild animals in the Forbidden Land, because humans are the most dangerous creatures, so killing them gives me a better feeling than sleeping with women, and especially when I die I will be reborn in heaven, and those who have died by my hand will become slaves. I will not tell you who I am because you will try to chase me or stop me from hunting more slaves for the afterlife Ebioriedameth Piety." Unsolved code. A letter that is so full of spelling and grammar errors that many people feel ironic that he could come up with a code that even the FBI had trouble with. And indeed, the subsequent codes were not solved until late 2020, after years of effort by codebreakers. Although Zodiac wrote letters to newspapers suggesting that he had murdered 37 victims, police had only confirmed 5 murders and 2 attempted murders. Several suspects were listed by law enforcement and amateur investigators, but no conclusive evidence was found. Despite a wealth of evidence, including fingerprints, physical appearance, the contents of the codes, and other useful leads, police were unable to track Zodiac down. On the evening of September 27, 1969, Zodiac struck again. He approached a young couple, Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, who were vacationing at Lake Berryessa in Napa County, California. Wearing a hood and a shirt bearing the cross symbol, Zodiac bound their wrists with a length of pre-cut plastic clothesline. Without warning, he stabbed Brian 6 times in the back with a large knife and Cecilia 10 times. Zodiac used a pen to draw a diagonal circle on Brian's car door with the date and location of the previous attacks. September 27, 1969, the time 6:30, and the symbol, with a knife. Zodiac then continued his familiar defiant tone when he called the Napa Police Department to recount the crime and show police where he had just committed the crime. Both Shepard and Hartnell were in critical condition but were still alive when the ambulance arrived, but Shepard later died from his injuries. However, the Zodiac killer did not hesitate. He continued to kill the 4th victim. 2 weeks later, on the night of October 11, 1969, Zodiac took a taxi, then asked the 29-year-old driver to take him to Fort Heights. When the taxi had just reached the intersection of Washington and Cherry Streets, the killer suddenly pulled out a pistol that he had hidden on his person and fired a shot at the poor driver. The victim was Mr. Paul Stein. Because the crime was in the city area, there were 3 witnesses when it happened. They quickly reported to the police, later recounting that this killer was a white young man, about 25 to 30 years old, about 1.8 m tall, very healthy looking, with short brown hair and wearing a pair of large framed glasses. Witnesses described the killer in detail, but when 2 police officers arrived to check the scene, they received a message from the operator that the killer was black, causing the killer to escape the police's sight. This case was said to be unlike the style of the Zodiac, so the police determined that this was a robbery. But 3 days later, a letter sent to the San Francisco Chronicle once again confirmed the involvement of the Zodiac killer. Still in the usual scribbles like the previous letters, Zodiac continued to describe the Stein murder in detail and included a piece of the victim's bloody shirt. At the end of the letter, the killer claimed that he was targeting a school bus full of children. The Zodiac killer then sent several letters to various Bay Area newspapers admitting to a series of other murders, along with mysterious codes. He also publicly taunted local police for not being able to find him. For decades after that, despite great efforts, what the police achieved in the Zodiac murder case was almost insignificant. A series of murderers such as Ted Kaczynski or Charles Manson, Arthur Lee Allen and Louis Myers were put on the list of suspects. However, the police could not provide convincing evidence about which of these was the Zodiac murderer. The deadlock of the U.S. police over the past decades has made the Zodiac murder case one of the most mysterious cases in the history of this country's justice. The investigation has continued for more than 5 decades, but there has been no new progress. On June 21, 2008, a brutally murdered body was found in a hotel in Fayetteville, Colorado, USA. When the hotel staff informed the police, they discovered a woman lying in the toilet without a single piece of clothing covering her body. According to the forensic investigation, the girl had been dead for several days. While examining the scene, the police noticed a mirror where someone had used lipstick to draw a circle and a plus sign, the famous symbol of the Zodiac killer nearly 40 years ago. Later, the police also received letters and messages confessing to the crime exactly like the Zodiac killer. Through the investigation, the police discovered that the victim was 23-year-old female soldier Megan Lynn Thoma, who was 7 months pregnant when she was murdered. Megan was a dental specialist, had been in the army for 5 years, and had served in Germany. On June 12th, she went missing after traveling from her home in Kentucky to the Fort Bragg military base in California. On June 28th, 7 days after Megan's body was discovered, the Fayetteville Observer received an anonymous letter from someone claiming to be the killer. At the end of the letter, the killer used a special drawing that the Zodiac serial killer used 34 years ago. The most recent date on the envelope of the killer's letter was June 24th, but the content of the letter was written on June 17th. In the letter, the killer said that he was the cause of the death of the female soldier Megan, and at the bottom of the letter he also described some details related to the crime scene. The letter read, June 17th, to whom it may concern. I am sending you this letter to inform you that I am responsible for the body you found in room 143 of the Fairfield Inn on Marriott Skibbo Road at 11:30 a.m. on June 21st. This case is truly a masterpiece. I will admit I have killed many people in many states before, but this is the first time I have used my signature in many years. There will be many, many more. The law enforcement officers of the city of Fayetteville are really incompetent. I really enjoy the helplessness of the investigators. Although the possibility that the killer in 2008 was not the Zodiac killer of nearly 40 years ago, many people are still afraid of the influence of the Zodiac killer on the psychology of the people and other criminals who want to borrow the Zodiac name to become famous in a haunting and creepy way. It is known that this is the second time a pregnant soldier at the Fort Bragg base has been murdered. Although the police have announced that they have solved the previous case, the case of female soldier Megan is causing extreme fear for the American people about the image of the Zodiac serial killer 34 years ago. Many people believe that, even if the real killer is not the Zodiac, the level of influence of this case on the psychology of the people is still very heavy. People are afraid that this time the killer will still be at large like the Zodiac years, and it came true. The mystery of the Zodiac continues to intrigue the public and has sparked a series of conspiracy theories about the identity of the killer. Robert Gray Smith, a retired editor of a San Francisco newspaper, has been interested in this serial murder case for the past 30 years. He believes that an elementary school teacher named Arthur Lee Allen in San Francisco Bay is very likely to be the Zodiac serial killer. Gray Smith has provided a lot of evidence to prove his speculation. For example, every time the Zodiac serial killer committed a crime, Allen coincidentally appeared in the area near the scene. Allen had a Zodiac brand watch. The shoe prints left by the killer in the Berryessa Lake case were similar in size to the shoes Allen often wore. Although Allen's appearance did not match the characteristics described by witnesses, Gray Smith believes that the serial killer once said in a letter that, "I only look like this when I kill people." In other cases, he was completely different. However, Allen later died in 1992, and no one has proven that this character was involved in any past murders. A team of more than 40 former police officers, private investigators, federal agents, and forensic experts recently announced that they have identified the Zodiac killer as Gary Francis Post, who died in 2018. According to The Independent on October 6th, after years of collecting evidence, the Casebreakers team claimed to have found many pieces of evidence that matched the Zodiac killer, including blood DNA, images in the photo lab of Mr. Post, scars or wrinkles on his forehead that matched the police sketch of the Zodiac killer. Evidence linking Mr. Post to Mr. Bates' death includes a history of living in the same area, a paint-stained watch found at the scene, and boot prints that match the shoe size of Mr. Post and the Zodiac killer. A wristwatch with paint splatter was collected at the murder scene and is believed to have belonged to the killer. This is also a coincidence because Post worked as a house painter for 4 decades. In addition, detectives found a heel print from a military-style boot, which matched the style and size of shoes found at other crime scenes of Zodiac and Post. A woman who lives next door to the Post said she believes he is the Zodiac killer after reviewing the evidence collected. Gwen Post and the Posts babysat her as a child in the 1970s and 1980s. During that time, he taught her how to shoot a gun several times a week and was overly controlling and abusive toward his wife. He had two personalities, she said. Now that I'm older and thinking back, it all makes sense. When I was a kid, I didn't think about it, but I was really overwhelmed by the discovery that Gary was the Zodiac killer. According to TMZ, Mr. Post was a painter who suffered from multiple illnesses and died in 2018 at the age of 80 from sepsis, septic shock, and difficulty swallowing. He was married and had served in the military. Although time may heal wounds and Zodiac is probably buried 7 feet underground, his terrifying memories are still imprinted on the minds of many Americans. Perhaps, Zodiac's true identity has followed him to the grave and will never be discovered.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And as always, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.